Welcome to Hiraeth, a home for the left in Wales.
Tonight we are joined by Bethan Sayed MS. She served in the Senedd for South Wales West since 2007, but has recently announced she will not be seeking a re-election in May. Hello Bethan, how are you?
Shema, yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, very well, and thank you very much for coming. We want to start sort of at the beginning of your political career, if that's all right. I just wanted to talk to you about how you got involved in politics and what inspired you to get involved.
Well, I've been sort of political since a very young age, in the sense that my family have always been involved in activism and campaigns. So growing up in the valleys in Merthyr, we would campaign quite strongly against open cast mining developments in the town, some directly behind the mountains where we lived in Hiraeth. There were plans when I was very small for that to be open casted, but we successfully fought that. And then my parents were involved in international campaigns as well. So we took to the streets of Merthyr to campaign against apartheid in South Africa. We went to see Desmond Tutu speak at a local chapel, and we would boycott South African goods. And as children, we would put all the food in the trolleys and we'd go to the checkouts, and then we'd say we weren't paying because they were South African goods, and we would be able to get away with those things a bit better than adults because we were small and we were cute. So those are my earliest memories of campaigning and taking part in choir activities with the Cor Cochion Caerdydd, and you know, so it's in my blood in that sense. And my mother comes from the north of Ireland, where, you know, she wasn't involved in any political setup there because it was so fractious, but she moved to Aberystwyth to get away from the Troubles, basically. She grew up in the height of the Troubles on the Falls Road. That's kind of shaped my politics as well, in hearing about the discord there and how what she would like to see a united Ireland in her lifetime. So we've always talked about politics around the table, and always enjoyed those, you know, quite passionate discussions from an early age. And so I went on to uni to study it, not because I wanted to become a politician, but because I wanted to continue those conversations and potentially get involved in more activism, you know.
You're from a traditionally quite Labour area. What inspired you to join Plaid as opposed to Labour?
Well, from a really basic level, I mean, I grew up without a park in my village, and every time we tried to get a park in Hiraeth, in our village, the Labour councillors would support the direct housing area against having a park for children because it was impinging on their view or on their privacy. And I thought, you know, and I was only young, I was thinking, well, this is just not very fair. So I grew up thinking they didn't really do very much for us. I never saw any positive outcome from being in a Labour-controlled area. Although I have socialist values, the Labour Party, even when I was very small, didn't really seem to me to be a party that was going very far in promoting that socialism as far as I was concerned. And in university, I guess when I got involved in student politics, I became the campaigns officer of the Student Guild, and then subsequently the president. I was running a lot of quite high profile campaigns against tuition fees, against the Iraq War. And so perhaps Plaid Cymru sort of saw me and they tried to embrace a bit of that activity, and I would come down to the Bay and do some press conferences with Plaid politicians. And Leanne Wood and David Iwan came to the Coops, the pub, the famous sort of Welsh language pub in Aberystwyth, and she inspired me because finally, after years of growing up in a town where, like you say, you'd naturally think you would be Labour, I saw a politician who looked like me, talked like me, was passionate like me, and she was in Plaid Cymru. And so I was like, well, you know, let's talk about this a bit more. Let's see if this is somewhere where I can fit, you know. And you know, you're in Aberystwyth, aren't you? It's a really quite nationalistic town. Let's be frank, Labour were nowhere to be seen. So even if you had student debates, you know, the Conservatives were actually stronger in Aberystwyth. So, you know, and also I'm passionate about Wales. Even if I didn't identify as a Plaid Cymru member until later on in my 20s, I felt that Wales deserved better and we needed to be somewhere on the world stage. So it was always going to be somewhere, a home for me, implied, and people that I could get on with.
Did the idea of independence appeal to you initially, or was it something that you've sort of grown to embrace as a political idea?
Well, I mean, like I say, I was more inspired by trying to get involved in community activism and change on a very micro level, a bit about what your podcast discusses a lot of, in terms of getting the grassroots involvement from people. It wasn't something that I had thought through hugely on a personal level, although studying international politics, I clearly had studied, various forms of nationalism and ideological processes. But, for me, it's about what type of independence we want to see. And for me, I would not want to just declare independence tomorrow just for the sake of it. I would want to be clear that we had a route map that was going to be rooted in social justice and principled values, where we would, look at ourselves as a piece in the world, as opposed to trying to pull up borders and to vilify anybody really who comes into this nation of ours. So for me, we have to be really clear that it has to be as open and inclusive as it possibly can be. And sometimes I do question whether the independence movement is going that way. And we have to really get people involved who are progressive, who are radical, who are not going to be perceived to be trying to close down debate and to not welcome, people with niche issues or, woke people like myself, and that we're going to be, those debates are going to be welcome, because, at the end of the day, that's my type of autonomy, not closed borders and closed minds.
So you were elected first time in 2007. How do you think what was the Welsh Assembly, now the Welsh Parliament, has changed since 2007? Do you think it's a Welsh democracy in a better place than it was 13 years ago, or do you think there's more dangers ahead?
Well, I think it clearly is better in the sense that, I was, one of those young people who first studied devolution, because the Senedd had just been created. I was too young to vote in the referendum, but I went on a few of the marches. So we were sort of guinea pigs in this whole, study of devolution. And so when I went to the Assembly as it was, you could see that it didn't have the teeth, and you could see that was frustrating for politicians. And for those who worked there. So it's really grown as an institution. And of course, when I was elected in 2007, we negotiated with the Labour Party as part of a coalition to campaign for a referendum on more powers for Wales. And that was something I was proud of. Of course, it was controversial to go into coalition with them. But for me, it was about getting those additional powers to Wales, putting the national cause before my own political gain of being a minister in a Rainbow Alliance that, we would have gone down the wrong route of history for, to progressing the national discourse. So I think we've gone from strength to strength. We've got much more powers now. We've introduced good legislation. We could be doing better, because I think if we had more members and we had more robust scrutiny as a consequence of that, we would be a stronger institution. So I think we've gone far, but we could go further, and we've got to be more ambitious for our nation. And I think that's where I think you need a change of government, because it's getting quite tired now, and they should probably internally acknowledge that they are getting tired, and they're there for power's sake. And let's have a change of government so that we can see what Wales can do differently. You
mentioned discourse a little. How do you think it's changed being a politician in terms of discourse? Do you think it's harder now to be a politician than it was when you were first elected, in terms of the sort of feedback you get on social media, etc.?
Well, for me, like I've said to lots of people, it's never really, it's always been pretty relentless, and it's always been pretty difficult. I was elected as a young female politician from the South Wales Valleys, and I was voted in at the top of a list system that many in my own party didn't really like either, let alone the wider public. And so I always felt I had to justify why I was there, and I've always felt that pressure. So for me, I think I've been able to develop a thicker skin than perhaps some other politicians who are older than me, because of the fact that I've had to always deal with social media. So even if it was a blog in 2006 or 2009 and leaving an anonymous comment, those are things that I've always had to deal with. And it's not right and it's not nice, but it's just how I've grown up, I think. This has been my journey through life, being a politician. So it's quite an unusual situation to be probably one of the most senior politicians in my group, but also still one of the youngest. So I think I've grown and I've changed and I've matured, in the public eye. You know, I've done some bad things, I've made mistakes, I know that, but I've also become a better person, and I've come out of difficult situations in my life, but through the prism of, you know, Media Wales quite often, and you know, it makes you more resilient, and it makes you a stronger person. So while I would never want that to happen to me again, and I would look back and feel quite tense about some situations that I've been in, I wouldn't change it, because I think it's made me who I am. But I think for people entering politics now, it still is difficult to energize on a positive level, because I know even if they're the most brilliant person on the face of the earth, they will still get treated badly, they will still get those trolls, they will still get hounded. They could be the most virtuous person, and somebody will find something to criticize them for. So it is a really difficult environment out there, and I still want people to get involved in politics, but I want them to be realistic, that they will have to take a bit of that, you know, they will have to take a bit of that negativity on board to get through things, you know.
We've talked about the Senedd a bit. What about Plaid itself? How's that changed since you joined and since you became elected to now? Obviously, you've been through a couple of different leaders, but what are the main differences between the party of old and the modern party?
Well, I mean, I was a member from when I was 24, and then I was elected, 23, and then I was elected at 25. So for me, my experience has been mostly as an elected politician. So from 2007, I was thrust into this conversation about coalitions, and I felt like a rabbit in the headlights. You know, I was just like, what is going on? We were having these conversations every day. We were going into private rooms and we were negotiating, and documents were being drafted willy-nilly, and I was just like, I don't know if this is what I signed up to, but this is what's happening. So that was so intimidating. And Ieuan Jones clearly was our leader at the time. And I kind of sensed that he wasn't really in favour of having any coalition deal with Labour. And so it took me, Helen Mary Jones, Leanne and Nerys Evans at the time to sort of come out publicly against that coalition, because we thought we're just going to be riding this tide and we're going to get caught up in this if we don't watch ourselves. So we made ourselves pretty unpopular pretty quick in the party, and so that was a really difficult time for me, if I'm honest, with the leadership, if I'm totally frank. I mean, I can get on with Ieuan Jones fine on a personal level, don't get me wrong, but it was politically difficult. And then obviously down the line, Leanne became leader, and I'd supported her, having been her friend and ally for quite some time. So that was a really good experience to have, but it gave different challenges, because before, me and Leanne were sort of, you know, the backbenchers who were causing trouble, and then suddenly, you know, Leanne's leading the party and having to implement those disciplinary actions that she would have been hit with in the past. So that was quite amusing, but also difficult on occasions, especially when I had to go into a room and answer to her on things that she may have thought that I had done wrong. So, and then obviously with Adam now, there's a change of style and a change of pace, and it's I think it's healthy for change to happen, although, you know, I did support Leanne to carry on, you know, everybody knows that, but, you know, things change and then we adapt, and we'll see now how we go in the Senedd elections next year.
Weird to a lot of people, I think, that when they see the support for independence growing so much, but they don't necessarily see that growing number of support for Plaid in opinion polls, etc. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think because, which I didn't mention earlier when we were talking about the independence movement, I think because we have to acknowledge the fact that in South Wales at least, you know, a big percentage of the votes are Labour, and we have to attract Labour members to the independence cause. And that's tricky because on one hand, electorally, you want to be pushing Plaid all the time in relation to independence, but then you've got to acknowledge that in Wales, it's very different to Scotland. We have to be trying to encourage those softer Labour voters who are nationalistic and former Lib Dem voters who currently have no home, potentially, that independence is something for them, and that it is inclusive of them. So why we may not be growing the polls is because people may be getting involved in Yes Cymru or Undod, like they would Amnesty or Oxfam, but they're not getting involved in Plaid as a political movement, as a machine. And we have to question why that is as well. I think we have to be frank about that. Is there something negative about us, so they're not attracted to the party politic machinery? Because I say to people like my father, who's in Yes Cymru, who isn't really wanting to get involved in party politics, I said, you know, look at Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP. Without them leading a government, you will not get independence. And so if you are a floating voter, or if you don't like some aspects of Plaid, but you want to see independence, I would say for now we have to try and encourage more people to vote for Plaid, just to realise that aim, or we have to really get on board with progressives in Labour who will want to work with us on that independence journey. So there's different ways of looking at it, and there's different strategies. And also in the past, you know, I can say it, I'm leaving soon, we haven't put independence front and centre of what we've done. You know, in some years we put it on page 53, you know, we've had criticism for that. If it's going to be our raison d'etre, you've got to put it on page 1, you know. So I know it could be seen as petty, but actually that is a statement in itself if you're not going to be forthright about it. So now we've got the Independence Commission, albeit it should be more diverse in its outlook. I think that's one thing I would say. But you know, let's have the conversations now and stop talking about whether we want it or not. Just get on with it.
Yeah, there's definitely a remarkable shift in gear, I think, since Adams become leader in terms of independence. Do you think that's why he became leader? Do you think because he was more willing to be front and centre with independence, or do you think there are other reasons?
Well, I don't think Leanne didn't put independence front and centre, to be fair to her. I just think that, you know, perhaps people wanted a different person to lead that fight in the party. I didn't really understand that criticism of her, because she's always been pretty strong in saying that's what she wants as well. And she said so on many of the TV debates that she engaged with. It's difficult to know. Sometimes I think people just, you know, they have a leader for a certain amount of time, and then naturally they want to look for something else that may inspire or may provide something different to the membership and to the nation. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it was solely to do with Adam, although yes, he has put it front and centre. But I wouldn't want to try and compare and contrast Leanne's efforts over Adam's, because I think that she was at least seeking to try and do that. But you can only do that if, you know, people want to get on board with it. So it's a difficult one. I think it shouldn't just be reliant on the leaders as well. We've got lots of different sections in the party, and it should be, you know, a team effort and a united effort to bring these ideas forward, not just one commission sitting there. It has to be the women's section, the BME section, all feeding into the conversations about what we want an independent Wales to be.
You look back on your time in the Senedd now, is there anything you're particularly proud of doing? Is there anything you'd change if you had your time again?
I'm proud of a lot of things, because I see myself as a sort of politician activist. So there's been lots of campaigning that I've done over the years. For example, on eating disorder, we've campaigned actively for strategies, and that has been forthcoming. The Vistian pensioners campaign, so campaigning for former Ford pensioners who were worried that their pensions were going to be stripped from them, and we were successful in negotiating with Ford on that. That was a campaign that went on for years and years and years. Recently then, stopping the super prison from being built in Port Talbot. I've done a lot of work on the arts as chair of the Culture, Welsh Language and Communications Committee, being the first chair to sort of openly ask the nation what they wanted us to look at, and we did an inquiry into music in education. And I've done a lot of work then on Tartar Steel, which there's loads of things that I'm proud of. I mean, what would I change, or what I... Yeah. Yeah.
Ever been tempted to run for leader or anything like that, or?
No, I'm not interested in that type of thing. I mean, I've got ideas and I've got views, and I'm just comfortable sort of advocating for the area that I'm in and seeing people grow politically. What I love is when I see people and they come to me and they say, "Oh, I can't do that, Beth. I never change that. I'm too small to do that. No one will listen to me." And then by the end of the campaign, they're like, "Right, what are we going to do next? You know, what are we going to do? How are we going to change it?" And it's so great to see. So I love those personal changes and people to get them to be inspired to do things in their community. And I think leading is a really, really challenging thing, and I wouldn't, you know, and I know it's been hard for all leaders of Plaid Cymru and other parties as well, because you've got to get everybody around the table and all the different factions to come to agreements, and all the disagreements that one party will have. You've got to try and be as moderate and as charming and as all of these things to different people, and I just, you know, I basically don't think that I would be able to have done any of that. But I know where my strengths are, and those are the things that I've gone with in my political career. So I'm happy to support others, but I wouldn't want to do anything like that. You know, I think probably in hindsight, I was probably elected a little bit too young, but then that's just hindsight, isn't it? It's a wonderful thing, only because I probably wasn't as mature as I would have liked to have been and did some stupid things. But hey, you know, I've come out the other side, and hopefully people will see that I'm a pretty decent person with, you know, with a caring attitude to others, and I'm in politics for the right reasons. But you know, I hope my legacy will convey that.
Obviously, you said it's not the end for you in terms of being involved in politics, even if it's not party politics. You said you'll remain a proactive activist. What sort of issues will you continue to campaign on?
I know it's not popular always with everybody, because, you know, we've had these conversations on social media, but I'm really passionate about helping refugees and asylum seekers, because, you know, some of them are my friends and they've made me a better person from hearing their stories. So I would love to carry on working with, you know, refugees and asylum seeker issues, because, you know, I think they're amazing for how they've arrived in this country, some from Syria, some from all over the world, where they've got individual reasons for why they've come that they wouldn't want publicised in podcasts like this, but have come for reasons that are very serious indeed. And then, you know, general issues, international concerns, and then things like housing in Wales I'm passionate about, and the arts, because I'm you know, I play the viola, I'm creative, so I would love to continue being involved in those types of things, because chairing the culture committee has been amazing. It's been something I really needed to give me a different sort of perspective on work as a politician, and meeting all these amazing organisations in the arts, and now with the coronavirus, seeing them suffering probably more than many other sectors actually. How can we change that around, and how can we support the art sector here in Wales? So yeah, there's enough that I would want to be keeping going with.
Talking about your announcement when you decided you were going to stand down, you decided you want to spend more time with your family, and especially your young son Idris, who's 6 months. 6 months. So yeah, what is it about modern Welsh politics that meant you couldn't keep going in the role as it stood? Firstly,
having reflected on what I've seen said about me, I would just want anybody to know that I don't want to put people off. And I think, you know, some of it came across like that, and it wasn't within my control, because obviously I was just commenting to media outlets. So I would really want people to understand that I want women to think and to do with this. I don't want them to think that, oh gosh, Bethan's not doing this now, so I couldn't possibly do the same thing because I've got kids or I've got these challenges. It's really, really personal. Some women do amazingly juggling and balancing everything, and I will take my hat off to them. But, you know, I'm not going to lie. I was putting my name forward. I'd prepared the designs. I'd set up a Facebook group. I was starting to campaign, but I was increasingly feeling more and more anxious and more sick, because I was thinking, I can't do this. I can't do this position. I won't say job, because it's more than a job to me. This means so much to me in my life. You know, when I was single or when I was getting married to Rahel, I've always put 100% into this job. Whether anybody wants to believe it or not, I would, you know, finish in the Senedd at 7 and rush to Pontrhydyfen for a meeting about school closures, or I'd go then over to Gower for something else. You know, I was exhausted all the time, and I just thought, and even then people would say, why didn't you go to that meeting, Beth? Why weren't you at that event? Why weren't you at that opening? And that's because you can't do everything all the time. So I just thought, well, how am I going to do this? How are people they're going to have more reason to complain potentially if I can't always balance having a little baby and being a good politician. And also, I'm nearly 40. I've been a politician since I was 25. I thought, well, now is the time for me and my family. You know, if it's not now, when is it going to be? Because he's going to grow up and then I'm never going to see him. So it was a massive deliberation. I cry almost on a daily basis thinking, have I done the right thing? But, you know, this is the route for me now, and I'm confident that there will be something else for me, and that I can contribute in a different way. You know, people say, no, well, she can get a nanny or something, there's no creche in the Senedd, but at the end of the day, I just would have felt more comfortable had there been a creche in the Senedd, because I could have popped in the day, I could have gone and seen him, I could have taken him out for lunch or something in the day. So, you know, in a job where it's not 9 to 5, you're there from sometimes 7:30 until 10 in the night at an event afterwards. It's not as simple as saying, you know, get a nanny or just do something else. It's just never ending. And so I just wanted to do justice by him, by my son, and thinking that we can do more things together. But then on the other hand, I think, well, he's not going to see me as an elected politician. He's not going to be inspired because I'm going to be, you know, not a politician anymore. But, you know, gosh, you know, I'm rambling now because it is such a difficult decision that I've made, and I just wanted people to understand that it's purely personal, and that it's just as difficult for me as it is to any other person, whether they return to work or not. You know, I'm not going to just sit around twiddling my fingers. I might go into doing something part-time, who knows? But, you know, for now, at least I won't be in elected politics. I'm not going to just, you know, go and sit and watch This Morning or Jeremy Kyle's been asked. I'm going to do things. You know, I've seen some comments that have made me chuckle. I'm gonna be active.
I don't think there's any danger of him not being inspired. In your opinion, you know, what are the sort of solutions you think would work, you'd like to propose to make politics a bit more accessible for especially for women and for people with young families? I've talked about more members, but
well, I don't want to talk about it to distraction. I just think that it would be beneficial because, for example, if you're on 2 main committees like I was before I went on maternity leave, chairing one, the responsibilities of chairing is very big, actually. And then I was on the economy committee as well as the only plaid MS. And then there's a lot of responsibility on you because you're scrutinising ministers all the time. And so you can't just rack up and just read a briefing and just hope to be good, at least only if you're really, really talented. And I've always been studious in wanting to read all the papers and get myself familiarised with the subject. So I don't come over as if I haven't read all my brief. But sometimes when you've got so many other things to do, there were days when you would have to do that, and I just wasn't comfortable. So having more MSs would allow for the slack to be taken off the system and off the other politicians, your colleagues, so you're not running around like headless chickens all the time. So in that sense, it would be really beneficial, and we could make better laws, we could make better scrutiny sessions then, you know, that's the reality. There's more of us to share the load, but there's more brains to go around as well, in a really crude description. And then my colleague Sian Gwenllian, like I've said on many of the radio shows I've gone on since, it has always, to be fair to her, advocated job sharing, and we are looking into it in the party as to what we can do. And I think that's something that I would totally advocate, because I don't think I would have hesitated going back if I knew I could go back part-time. I think it would have just been a matter of, yeah, I'll sort childcare part-time, and then the other half of the time I'll be with him and I can do things with him. We need to show that can be something that we'll campaign for in the future, and I want to be part of that discussion. And then, of course, like I've said to you already, is, you know, childcare. A lot of them, you know, are you know, very busy. They don't take them up children on. They've got waiting lists, and I think not only for MSs but for staff and even people around the bay. You know, I wouldn't say it just has to be for staff. Of course, you'd have to get all the security checks in, but why not open it up to Bugtown and the wider area? If you did have a creche in the bay, it doesn't have to be exclusive just to us, and that would have really helped me as well. There is clearly a discussion that needs to happen in that regard. So those are the instant things I think that would really help.
See, there was the example of Stella Creasy in Westminster, where she had a locum MP sort of do her front-facing job for 9 months. Is that something that anyone's had a chat to the Senedd Commission about, or is that something they've not been keen to embrace?
Well, I have a part-time cover for when I'm off. The remuneration board were very, very strong in informing me they didn't want it to be called a Locum MS or AM as it was at the time, because they said it was inappropriate. I'm not quoting them correctly. I mean, inappropriate to call it a locum in the sense that they weren't elected and that we didn't want to give people the wrong idea. But Stella's worker, who I talked to over Zoom, because he is not elected to anything, but they got around that and were able to call her a locum MP, and I think that gives him more status. Had Sarah in my office been able to have been called that by her title, because sometimes she's been refused access to meetings when actually she is me on earth at the moment, and I think that's just rude. What I would hope the remuneration board would do would be to increase that type of cover to full time, because they said that I didn't need more than a part-time cover. I would obviously say that we needed full time, and also then come up with a title that even if they didn't want to call it a locum, that it was something that had more robust and had more respect. So yeah, we campaigned for that and we were successful, though I was told that they were planning to talk about some of these things anyway. Proxy voting as well, that was introduced, so Di Lloyd votes for me. But I did say we should be able to vote virtually, but now they're doing it anyway. So I was talking about these things for many years, and now I'm glad to see that they're doing it, although I had to take a pandemic for it to happen.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? You see that all these things they said were impossible for decades are now very possible. I imagine it's the same in the Senedd as it is in Westminster. What was the reaction in the Senedd when you raised all these issues, and what was the sort of public reaction to your announcement? I know you were, quite, not happy is the wrong word, quite overwhelmed by how nice everyone was to you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, I don't want to say this in a negative way, but perhaps it's because people only realise when you're going what you've done. People realise, oh gosh, they actually look back and see the things you've done, and I was really grateful that people thought that I had contributed a lot to many different issues, and it was quite emotional then to read, oh, you got in touch with me when we did this campaign, or somebody else saying you helped me in this situation, and so it was yeah, it was very, very nice to read when I was feeling pretty, sort of not torn, because I knew I was going to make that decision, but yeah, it was just a difficult time. So I was really pleased that people were nice, and I did see some negatives as well, but you always get that. But generally, colleagues and people who I'd worked with over the years were really supportive. But also, the only thing I would say that was a tiny bit, would not annoyed me, because I would give my reasons why I was standing down, was like, I just want people to think, yeah, I am standing down perhaps because some of the reasons that I've given in terms of childcare and stuff, but I have done more than that, and there are more issues to discuss than that. And I'm glad there's a focus on these childcare issues and diversity in the Senedd in general, but also I think especially women, female politicians, we sort of get pigeonholed into these specific boxes, and I just want people to know, I hope that they can see that there's lots of other issues that I've been involved in over the years, and hopefully can still advocate on their behalf in different ways in the future.
So what's next? Obviously, you've said you're not going to be watching Good Morning Britain or Homes Under the Hammer anytime soon. But what do you think the next steps are for you?
Well, somebody said to me as well, everybody who stands down like this would have a plan. Or then somebody else cynically said, oh, it must be something to do with how politics is going right now. And there's parts to do with that, because I mentioned in my statement about the toxicity of debate, and some of it is to do also with me wanting to find my creativity and my spark again. I feel like I've lost a bit of that in my politics, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I don't know on a professional level is the frank answer, because I'm not really planning on jumping into something straight away. What I was talking about in terms of activism was me taking part as a as you would, or any other volunteer in a campaign, and just getting involved as I used to. So if there are doors that open for different things, then I'll look at it, but I don't really have a clear vision right now of what I'd like to do. That's yeah, sorry to disappoint.
Do you ever see yourself standing for election again?
Well, I think, I wouldn't say no, because I think I still have that, energy, and I still have ideas. It's just where I am in my life at the moment. We had an internal election campaign that I didn't feel I would wanted to fight while on maternity leave. That took the energy out of me on that professional level. So I do have more to give, and if Plaid wanted me on that, if Plaid members wanted me to do that in the future, then I wouldn't say no. It's just about the appropriateness of where I would stand, and if people wanted me, basically, at the end of the day. When I stood in 2007, I seemed to be in the right place at the right time. Janet Davis had retired, and sometimes things happen in life and you just find yourself there. So potentially in the future I might find myself doing it again, but I'm not gonna, if it doesn't happen, then because if you plan that that's what you want to do, then for me that never happens. So if that's something that does happen, then yeah, that'd be nice. But otherwise I might do something totally different. Who knows?
Bethan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
If you like what you've heard tonight, please find us on Medium at HiraethBlogCymru, on Facebook at HiraethBlogCymru, and on Twitter at HiraethBlog.
Thank you for listening to Hiraeth. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review.